Welcome back to geometry. We are at 8.2 special right triangles. Now, today we are going to be focusing solely on isosceles right triangles. And if we think of an isosceles right triangle, what that means is that the two sides are the same. This is a 90-degree angle. And then there are two angles that are not the right angles must also be the same. And we would know that in an isosceles right triangle that these angles would have to be 45 and 45 degrees, and then their two sides are going to be the same. All right, when we look at the legs, we have this new theorem or formula that works, but before we learn about this, we want to think about why this works, or if there's a certain pattern that we see here with these kind of right triangles. Meaning, if I were to draw out a 1 by 1 isosceles right triangle, okay, so the side lengths or the legs are 1 and 1, and the hypotenuse is unknown. We know that from a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, I could solve for this unknown length. So we would get 1 squared plus 1 squared equals c squared. 2 is equal to c squared. Rad 2 is equal to c. And when I repeat that process for all of these triangles, we're going to see a pattern forming. So let's do the same thing on a 2 by 2. So 2, 2. Again, we would get 2 squared plus 2 squared equals c squared. We get 8 equals c squared. We get 2 rad 2 is equal to c. And then when we do the same for 3, we get 3 squared plus 3 squared equals c squared. 18 equals c squared. 3 rad 2 is equal to c. And when we do 4, we get 4 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. 32 equals c squared, which rad 32 would break down to rad 16 times rad 2. Rad 16 is 4. We get 4 rad 2. And if we did 10, we would get 10 squared plus 10 squared equals c squared. 200 equals c squared. 10 rad 2 is equal to c. And remember that rad 2 is the same as 1 rad 2. So now hopefully you can see this pattern. If we had a 50 by 50 isosceles right triangle with our two legs, we would know that the hypotenuse would be 50 rad 2. If we had 343, we would have 343 rad 2. So this is our pattern. If we were to put this chart in words, it would read what this is saying in red. In a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the two legs must be congruent, and the hypotenuse is always going to be rad 2 multiplied by the leg. Alright, so we're going to solve these 4 triangles. One other thing too is that if you forgot this rule, we could use SOHCAHTOA and solve for x and y. Now, the reason why we wouldn't want to use trig here is that it would take a lot of work, and we could use trig, but what we're going to find out is that the rule of a 45, 45, 90 triangle actually saves us a lot of time. Because what I know here is that if this angle is 45 and this angle is 45, I know that these two angles are the same, or excuse me, these two sides are the same because these two angles are the same. So the side opposite the 45-degree angles will always be the same in a right isosceles triangle. So we know that x is going to be 5. And then to move from a leg to a hypotenuse, remember the rule is to multiply by rad 2. So I take 5 and I multiply it by rad 2, and so my answer is 5 rad 2. That would be the answer for y. Alright, now just to show you that it would work, if we were to use trig, I would take, for y, I would say sine of 45 degrees is equal to 5 over y. And then I could multiply this out, and I would end up getting 5 rad 2 as my answer. Okay, but why do all of this work when we can just do one step and we're done? All right, next problem. Here's a 45-degree angle. Let's write 45 degrees over here. The unknown is y. And actually, these two side lengths have to be the same because it is a isosceles right triangle. So we're going to put y and y. Now this time, we're going to start at the hypotenuse and work backwards. And so we need to do the opposite of multiplying by rad 2. Well, the opposite of multiplying by rad 2 would be divide by rad 2. So if I were to divide by rad 2, I would get y is equal to 6 rad 2 divided by rad 2. These rads 2 cross out, and I get y is equal to 6. Alright, then our third problem, we can write 45 degrees here. Again, we're moving from our hypotenuse to a leg. So to move from a hypotenuse to a leg, we do not multiply by rad 2, we do the opposite, that's divide by rad 2. So I can say that x equals 10 divided by rad 2, multiply by rad 2 over rad 2, 10 rad 2 over 2 reduces to 5 rad 2 as the answer. So x would be 5 rad 2. And this length would be 5 rad 2 as well. Alright, and then to our last problem, if we have xx, this is 45 degrees here and here. Again, we're moving from hypotenuse to leg, so we're going to divide by rad 2. And so I would say that x is equal to 1 divided by rad 2, multiply by rad 2 over rad 2 to clear up the square root on bottom, and we get rad 2 over 2 is equal to x. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.